not something to be proud of, but I think one of the hallmarks of Asian parenting is we see ourselves as being this person who is like a higher
Superior,
status,
right?
superior,
Yeah.
you need to listen to me.
Yeah.
And as a result, we don't listen to the
them.
child, and then we just go straight into problem solving.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to Season 2 of Tune Islam, a podcast for Singapore Muslim millennials on Islamic faith, love and happiness. Here's where we share spiritual guidance and practical insights to inspire positivity and uplift our well-being. My name is Azzah Fariha and I will be your host for today. With us today we have Ustazah Nadia Hanim, a member of the s.a.w Youth Network. Ustazah is passionate in empowering different members of the community. Ustazah also heads Al-Wafa, an institute that aims to provide moral and spiritual guidance and illuminate souls through knowledge and wisdom. We also have a special guest with us here today, Muhammad Haikal bin Jamil, a senior clinical psychologist and founder of Impossible Psychological Services, where they specialize in psychotherapy and couples therapy. Welcome to our podcast today, Ustazah Nadia and Haikal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ustazah. Today we have a very interesting and big topic to talk about. We are talking about children. I would like to pose my first question to you. What is the fundamental role of parents in shaping the character and values of the children in Islam?
When we talk about the fundamental role of parents, since I'm here, I'm going to talk about the Islamic perspective. So the fundamental role for Muslim parents in shaping the values of their children. Our main reference has always been the teachings of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Parenting style evolves. Our generation style of parenting, I think you will agree with me also, is different from maybe our great-grandfather's style or even our parents' style of parenting.
Yes.
But as Muslims, because our point of reference is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whatever that he's been teaching us, it has always been relevant up until to date. And if you ask me, so what is his teachings when it comes to parenting? Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his approach is on gentle love or gentle parenting. I remember one of his advice to his wife, Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha. He told Sayyidah Aisha did something and maybe it was a bit harsh. And then the Prophet Muhammad SAW advised her and told her that, Ya Aisha, O Aisha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is gentle and He loves gentleness. And when we look back at the life of the Prophet Muhammad SAW, he has always been gentle towards everyone. So if we look at his seerah or his life, how is his actions or how did he deal with his own children? What we see from that, his interaction and his action towards his children, it was always through gentleness. He was always kind. He was always gentle. If the question is whether Prophet Muhammad SAW had ever punished or have ever hit his own children, the answer is he never. He never did that. So how is his style of parenting that we can emulate from his character is the word gentleness. He's always gentle. So it's not tough love. So if people say that, Islam teaches us about being tough, you have to be tough in loving. But when we look back at our point of reference, which was the teachings of Prophet Muhammad SAW, there was never a tough love. It was always a kind love and a gentle love.
MashaAllah. Thank you so much for the reminder, Ustazah. I would say as a parent myself, it's easier said than done. We would all love to, try our best to be gentle, but sometimes I think, as you said, parenting styles have evolved. Maybe we are less patient. We are caught up with a lot of things to do in our everyday lives. Then ended up or result in us being short with our temper. Sometimes things that we don't want to happen might happen. All right, which brings me to my next question, which I would like to ask Haikal. I understand, or I have read, that there are over 2,000 child abuse cases that's being investigated in Singapore in 2021. This is the highest number in a decade. To your expertise, what are the signs that parents should look out for in their children and themselves, which may indicate the need for professional help? At which point in a relationship between the parent and the child might one feel that they need to seek for help?
I like what you said about at what point in their relationship, because the biggest indicator of whether something is not right in the parenting is there a fracture in the relationship. Because when the parent, although I would say most of them would try to discipline their child with good intentions, they want it the best for their child. But sometimes, as you mentioned, we might get a bit over involved, a bit too quick-tempered, trying to discipline, because we want to see the best in them.
Yes.
And when we actually do this too much over a certain boundary, it will affect the relationship between ourselves and the child. And when the child does not listen to us, the child shows some form of rebelliousness, then that indicates that maybe something is not right. We may not be able to hear what's in their thoughts, we won't know what their emotions are, but this is actually reflected in terms of their behavior. So are they more withdrawn? Are they willing to spend time with us? Because when parents, they go beyond and they started becoming maybe towards being more abusive, the child may not feel as comfortable spending time with them. So a good way to reflect is to see, well, has there been any changes in the behavior compared to before? When the child does not feel comfortable, the child starts to withdraw from the parent, perhaps that's one. And as for the parents themselves, it'll be good to also reflect on their behavior, on how they are managing the child as well. Because when we get quick-tempered, we will sometimes feel that sense of regret. And this is something that I often tell the parents that I see, that it's fine if you actually do something that's overbearing, you just discipline them a bit punitively. But it doesn't mean that after that, parents, they just go, okay, you know what? I'm your parent, so you should just accept me for who I am. No, I'm the parent. I shouldn't be apologizing to you. Yes. But it's that repair. So it's not about being the perfect parent, but being good enough. And if you have actually crossed that line, okay, and you feel that something's not right, my child is like crying too much and so on, then how can I repair that? So it could mean maybe explaining to them, giving them that kind of hugs and explaining to them, and from there that will start repairing the relationship, and that will help. Even though you are trying to be a bit more strict, it doesn't mean the child will know that, well, at least my parents still care for me. My parents want the best for me, and therefore that relationship still stays a solid one.
I like how you said that our intention as parents is actually a good one. We want them to behave well. We want them to be good people. But sometimes in the process of wanting that too much, we end up speaking too harshly or end up giving them corporal punishments, something like that. And I really agree with you with what you said, that it's okay for us to go beyond like what Ustazah said, gentle parenting. We want to, if you punitively discipline them, it's okay as long as you explain to them after that, what the reasons behind my actions. But then I would like to go back to Ustazah then, like, what is, when you mentioned about Prophet Muhammad's way, gentle parenting, how does this then relate to what Haikal has mentioned? That there seems to be a little bit of a conflict of interest, whether the correct way, the way we want to follow is Prophet Muhammad's way. But at the same time, because parenting has evolved, we tend to take a different approach. How then can we meet in the middle?
These are the narrations from Prophet Muhammad s.a.w. We know about his teachings, we know about his life, his character towards his children. But then again, the scholars, they derive lessons from Prophet Muhammad s.a.w. And they did mention, they put into writings on ways to punish. It doesn't mean that we cannot punish at all.
Correct, yes.
Our children. But how do we do so? Are there conditions? Are there ways of doing so? Is beating or hitting children one of the ways of doing so? So in this case, from what we can learn from our scholars, because they've written books on this. So they mentioned that hitting or beating a children should be the last resort. And when they wrote about beating, they did mention that beating is only a light tap onto the hands and the feet only, just to make them realize that whatever that they are doing is wrong. So I'm trying to discipline you, so that they realize. So we cannot just, at times, children, if we are too gentle to them, they will, the Malay word is like besar kepala.
Yes.
So it's like they will feel that, never
It's
mind,
okay
next time I can do again.
Yes.
What I get is gentleness from parents.
Correct. That's correct.
So that's why we have to derive lessons. Okay? Because Prophet Muhammad SAW, he was like that. I mean, he's a prophet. He could be like that.
We are mere humans.
We are humans. We are his followers. And it's very difficult for us. As much as we wanted to emulate his character,
Yes.
but it's hard.
Correct.
I mean, we have to be realistic lah. Yeah. So in this case, the scholars, they wrote that the last resort is punishment by hitting, but it must be it's a light tap. But before that, you have to try to discipline them by reason out with them first. And they mentioned this. And of course, by one thing about children, especially young ones, if we show them affection, or if we show them kindness, when we try to implement lessons into them, to discipline them, I think it's easier for them to accept. Because by nature, I mean everyone by nature, we love things that are positive. We love approaches that are positive. So imagine that someone wanted to correct you, and that person correct you with harshness, versus a person who corrects you in kindness. Which one do you feel better?
Yeah.
And which one do you feel that you want to listen to?
Yeah.
Of course, by nature, our heart, it's like our nature, we love something that is beautiful, something that is kind, something that is gentle. So children are like that as well. So we start off with that first. And the last resort, yes, there is punishment, but how is it? And there are ways to do so. So one of the things that I find interesting when I read the books from our scholars, they mention about intention. Whenever you get angry, so they said that whenever that you get angry of your children, you have to understand that when you punish them, when you scold them, when you raise your voice at them, is it because your intention is to set a lesson, to give them lesson, or is it because of your frustration?
Yes, correct.
So you have to be aware of that. You have to be the adult. You have to
regulate your emotions,
spiritually and psychologically matured, because you're the adult here.
Yeah.
So is it because you're turned off by your children, or you want to give lessons to them? So the intention is very important. And if you feel that, because my child, he raised his voice, you're feeling angry, you're feeling frustrated, it's because of his action towards you, not really implementing lessons to your children. So you have to ask yourself that. And in order to do so, you have to have that knowledge. You have to know whether you have issues on your own. If you have issues on your own, maybe anger issues, you have to work on that first.
Yep.
You have to deal with your emotions, regulate your emotions first. And then when you scold or you punish or you discipline your children, you'll know that it's for the sake of correcting them. It's for the sake of giving or implementing lessons to them, but not because you're frustrated with them.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware of that. And in order to be aware, you have to have the knowledge. And even the Prophet Muhammad SAW, when we talk about anger management, there is a narration about anger management. There's this narration when Prophet Muhammad SAW, someone was angry, and Prophet Muhammad SAW said that if you're angry, if you are standing up, pause for a while. So that means you do not react when you're angry. So this is the anger management taught by Prophet Muhammad SAW. If you're angry, pause for a moment. And after that, if you are standing up, sit down. If you feel that you're still feeling angry, lie down. And if you feel that you're still feeling angry, you go and take ablution. That means you wash your face with water. The water maybe can cool you off. Down. And if you still feel that you're still angry, meditate. In Islam, meditation is our prayer. So there are pauses. So these pauses are meant to make you think. What response should you take? So you are more calmer and you are more sane and more reasonable
Correct.
when it comes to disciplining your children. It's not you reacting.
Correct.
Now, the thing about anger, once you react, you'll regret.
You regret, that's why.
Yes. Once you react, you'll regret. So Prophet Muhammad SAW was actually teaching us to pause for a moment, because that's when you can think better and you can regulate your emotions, and then you can, discipline them for the sake of correcting them, to make them better. It's not because you're frustrated.
Yes,
it's not because of you, but because you intend well for your children.
I see. MashaAllah. I think that's a very good reminder, because the same steps that Prophet Muhammad has Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has taught us is the same way that I assume and I think is the correct way to handle our children as well, to pass it on to them. It's a good practice. So my next question is for you, Haikal. Haikal, parenting can be a very challenging journey, and many parents carry the weight of generational trauma. I've seen this term, generational trauma, being, said quite a few times. Can you try to explain to us what actually generational trauma is?
So generational trauma occurs when the patterns that are negative by one's parents continue to perpetuate with the current generation. So as we spoke just now, right, there are certain parenting behaviors, even though the parents try their best, there will be some parenting behaviors which are uncomfortable, which are not being enjoyed by the child, right? But then this also continues to be repeated by them. So what these patterns are will differ. You might have certain parents who are very critical, and then when they become parents, they become critical themselves. When their parents were last time, let's say, were maybe physically abusive or just being physically punitive, right? Hit them, and then they start being punitive as well. So this generational trauma, it just perpetuates. It just goes from one generation to one generation to one generation. Even though the person may, if you ask them to reflect, in the past when this happened to you, do you like it or not? They say, no, I don't like it. But I still do it. Yeah. Why? All right. And so this can be traced back to this psychological concept, what we call the law of dominant thought. So there may be some individuals who engage in this kind of negative parenting practices. And when I traced with them, these practices were also engaged by their parents as well. And when I asked them like, oh, how come, you didn't like it, right? When your parents did it, but why you still perpetuate this behavior? And they wouldn't know. They will say that, well, I didn't like it. I try not to be like them, but I still do it. And this can be traced to this psychological concept, which we call the law of dominant thought. So this law of dominant thought occurs when, one example I'll give when we in psychology, we tell people like, okay, so don't think of a pink elephant. And when I say don't think of a pink elephant, the pink elephant is there.
Yes.
Right? And when the person says, I don't want to be an abusive parent, although you don't want that model is there.
Yep.
So that generational trauma occurs because the parent's parenting style serves as a model. And how the person responds is they either surrender to it, meaning that, well, no, my parents treated me this way, I turned out fine, so what's wrong with me doing that? So they surrender. So then they perpetuate, well, this is how it was. Or they may overcompensate. They go like, okay, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to be a fierce parent. As much as they try not to be a fierce parent, they don't have a healthy model for it. So they may suppress the anger, anger. And with emotions, when we suppress, it just gets more and more, and then it gets explosive.
Yes.
And although we'd like to think of ourselves as rational people, but actually as humans, we are more emotional than rational. We engage in certain emotions first, and then we logically try to apply it later. So when they maybe become punitive towards their child, and then after that, because they are very naughty, that's why. So then they justify. It's not because of you. If you didn't do this, right? If you don't do that, then I wouldn't have done this to you. So that kind of perpetuation actually occurs. And as a result, this continues, and this may possibly go down from one generation to the next generation. So I guess the responsibility is, if you are a parent and you realize that you are in this pattern of generational trauma, whether you want to break out of it. So breaking out of it partly involves, healing the abuse that you have experienced as a child, right? And also knowing what are the alternative messages that you have to give to your child. Because as parents, I think generally in the community, we try to oversimplify the role of the parent. People ask, do I be strict? or do I be a friend? And we will hear things like, you have to be a very good friend to your child. You need to be very strict to your child.
Yeah.
And the role of the parent is actually very varied.
Yes.
You need to provide emotional support. You need to provide unconditional love. But at the same time, you need to push them towards being their best. Sometimes you need to tell them no.
Yes.
So it's all just very mixed, right? And sometimes you just confuse what
Like
role
what?
am I?
Yeah, correct.
What role am I playing right
Exactly.
now? And if with the generational trauma, certain things become very prominent. Like if the parent's very critical, meaning that, okay, high standards should be met, right? If you score 95 over 100, where's that 5 marks? And then you get, you know, for every mark, I've got clients where every 1 mark you miss one stroke of the cane.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
So it becomes very difficult. And although they may say, yeah, that's what happened. That's how my parents taught me. So they don't have a model, and therefore either healing their traumas or learning proper positive parenting steps, right? To manage the child's behavior, because there's so many ways, so many roles that you need to play. How do you play this role? Sometimes you need to be fierce, sometimes you need to be nice. And even when you are trying to play this role of being strict or being nice, it depends on a lot of factors, and you need to be sensitive to these factors. So for example, we talk about, it's just a young child accidentally.
Give chance,
yeah, exactly, like maybe hit the cup, right? Okay lah, give chance lah. But what if this young child wants to run across the road? You cannot go to the child and go like, boy, you cannot cross the road.
Yes, exactly.
You need to be fierce, right? And that kind of flexibility is what the parents need to have. And that's where parenting practices, be it learning from other people or getting professional help, especially if they are in this form of generational trauma, is very important.
That's a very well explained concept. Thank you so much, Haikal, for giving us this whole insight, to parenting. And I can say that being a parent myself, I totally agree with you. There's no right and wrong to parenting. It's a very, very complex situation with your children.
I'm a psychologist myself, and I'm a parent, and I make mistakes. I slip up sometimes as well, right? And that's where, I mentioned just now, repairing. Sometimes I find myself like, I get explosive as well.
Yes.
And it could be not because of the child. Sometimes it's just bad day.
Correct.
So
exactly.
certain things. So how do you repair it? So even if you say that you sometimes slip up and all that, I'm a psychologist. I slip up as well. So there's no shame in admitting to your child. In fact, that's what your child would want to acknowledge as well, that, my feelings are hurt when you hurt my feelings. Yeah.
I think at the end of the day also, it's important that we forgive ourselves, that we don't beat ourselves up too much for the way that we behave. And like you said, repairing the situation or relationship with your children is the most important. I think as parents, we often forget that we are not only teaching our children, but we are also blessed with the opportunity to learn from them. Always be kind to yourself in the journey of parenting. It's not an easy road, but it's a very fulfilling one. Ustazah, now in this digital age, our children are very easily exposed to lifestyles or situations that are not aligned with Islamic teachings. As our children encounter diverse perspectives on social media, they see a lot of, when they scroll, they see a lot of things on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, whatever, right? Some of them might question their faith or feel confused about their identity as Muslims. How can we as parents help them to navigate these challenges and strengthen their connection to Islam?
All right, to answer your question, I would like to bring you and the viewers to one of our scholars. I do not have any knowledge on parenting until I learn about it from, firstly, from Prophet Muhammad s.a.w, and then from the scholars who derives lessons from the narrations of Prophet Muhammad s.a.w and from the Quran. There are 3 levels of educating your children. So I'll be bringing you and the viewers to a book written by a person named Dr. Nasih Alwan. So he wrote a book entitled Educating Children in Islam. So in his book, he mentioned about the levels of educating your children according to age. Most crucial part is actually the communicating part. So there are 3 levels. The first level is when they are newborn, our children are still newborn, until the age of before mumayyiz. Mumayyiz means pubescent. So that means around from newborn until the age of 6. The second level is from the age of 7 until the age of before our child is baligh. So baligh is pubescent, sorry. So before they are baligh, so we put the second level is between 7 to maybe 13 for girls, so maybe 15 for boys. The third part is their teenage years until they're adults. So the first level is when the scholars mention that you play with your children. So that means that if they do things that are undesirable, they don't know what they are doing. They really don't know what they're doing. Imagine from newborn until 6 years old. So if you were to scold them, they don't get it. They don't understand. They cannot process it. So there's reason why the scholars said you play with them. If they do something that you find it undesirable or you need to correct them, you correct them with love, with gentleness. And the second level is when you discipline them at the age of 7. That's the best time to discipline them. And that is the best time to communicate with them as well. Imagine your child is at primary 1. So at the primary 1 level, you can actually reason out with them. You can actually talk to them as though that you're talking to an adult, but of course at their level.
Yes.
And they can process. They have their thought processing. It's growing. Their thought processing, and they can actually make sense of what you're telling them.
Yes.
If you reason with them, why mommy doesn't like you to do this, because this, and they can actually process that. They understand that. And that's when the communication part is the most crucial. That time, it's not when they are teenagers. So it starts actually from that age. We call it Mumayyiz age. In Islam, Mumayyiz age is 7. That's why there's a hadith from Prophet Muhammad SAW. Prophet Muhammad SAW mentioned this narration: instruct your child to do prayer, although that is not obligatory for them, but instruct them at the age of 7, because that's the best time to actually educate them, to reason out with them. And they will follow. They don't rebel. The rebellious time is during the third part of it, the third level. The scholar mentioned. The second part is when you discipline them, you communicate with them. And the third part is you befriend them. Because if you want to discipline them at the age of teenager, it's most likely they won't accept.
They will rebel.
Yes, they will rebel. That's when they feel that we are nagging, and they feel that, why are you trying to control my life?
Yes,
that's that age, the teenage age until they are adults. So that's when the scholar said that third level is when you befriend them. You talk to them like friends. Make them feel comfortable with you until they can open up with you, until you know what's going on around their lives.
Yes.
So if you start disciplining at that age, according to the scholar, because I also don't know until I learned, according to them, it doesn't give the effect compared to when you try to discipline them at the second level, which is at the 7 years old until they are baligh. So again, to summarize everything, communication is the key. And the timing is also important. So you start them young. You start talking to them, communicate with them, discipline them since the age of 7. But before 7, you play with them. You hug them a lot. You show love. When they make mistakes, you also hug them. You also kiss them. Because
I'm laughing because what you're saying is very relatable to me, because I have a primary 1 girl. So she is understanding what like you mentioned. She understands more. Her thought processes are better. And then I have a 3-year-old. And when I frown at him, then he look at me, Mommy, why are you angry with me?
So cute.
So he doesn't understand what he's doing wrong. So it's exactly what you're saying. So I'm like, I find it so funny.
It's like they're brilliant. These people, the scholars, like they know what they're talking about, and we're actually learning from them.
Yes.
Yeah. I do not have the knowledge, definitely not. So I'm saying this because I learn from them, and I learn whatever that they've written, and we try our very best to
apply it to
us. And of course, when everything else fails, when parents say that, I tried to befriend my children, but they just distance themselves. We have children like that. They distance themselves from their parents. What should we do? Now, in Islam, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ Allah. Once you have exhausted all effort. This one is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He mentioned that after you exhaust all effort, you just leave everything to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not that you leave them to Allah first. You have to put in the effort.
Try
so,
first.
Yeah, that's how the process is like in Islam. You don't just say, I just make dua lah. I just leave to Allah. Yeah, cannot. Allah mentioned azam first. Azam means exhaust all effort. That means you have to learn, seek knowledge, and then you try your very best to apply the knowledge. And after that, however they turn out to be, you leave them to Allah. And this is when you started to find, people started to come to ask the Ustazah, Ustazah, can give me dua? Ustazah, can you read my ayah? Yeah, because they exhaust their efforts. So and this is how we actually calm or comfort our heart, is that, okay, I tried my best and Allah won't judge me because I've done my part, I've done my role. And after that, we are not accountable anymore. Why? Because our role is when they need us to guide them, their own individual. We can give them advice, we can guide them through life, but at the end of the day, their decisions are theirs. We are not accountable after they are adults.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ustazah, for sharing. My next question then is for Haikal. Haikal, at this point, what are some effective communication strategies for Muslim parents to establish open and understanding dialogues with their children? You know, especially when we are discussing sensitive topics like faith and ideology. What effective communication strategies can we apply to our children?
So I really like what Ustazah mentioned just now. And even before these communication strategies, I think what's important is that foundation, the foundation of a good relationship. The parents need to have that good relationship with their children first. You know, for example, and this is something that I ask adults to consider as well, right? If, let's say, you have your very good friend asking you to eat fast food together, right, versus someone that you don't really like to go to do something healthy, maybe go to the gym, who would you choose to go out with? You would choose to go out with your friend, even though it's fast food, but even versus going to the gym. But why? Because of the relationship. So that relationship is very important in order for the child to feel comfortable to communicate with you, to open up to you. And like what Ustazah say, play with the child, listening to the child. And even I think one thing that we tend to miss out is that even for men, for fathers, right, to play with the child, because the way that the fathers play with the child and how moms play with the child is very different.
Exactly, correct.
Fathers engage in more rough and tumble play, which research has shown has other benefits which mom are unable to do. So when fathers engage in rough tumble play, it helps to teach them emotional regulation, because that's when they were like, oh, so excited, they're trying to like manage their emotions, right? And then they start learning to take risks, but from the fathers like will do more risky stuff, but okay, but be careful, right? Correct. So they learn to take risks, and from that it also creates that close relationship with the parents. Now when the child feels that, okay, I have this close relationship with the parent, then they are more willing to open up. And no matter, even though it's a very sensitive topic, it's a very difficult topic, they will be more likely to feel that, okay, this is the person that they want to go to. And we want to avoid that kind of situation where the child is in a difficult condition or difficult situation, and they don't feel that I can get this support from my parents. So who did they go to?
Friends.
Internet, friends, and well, if they have with the good influences, that'd be great. But if they don't, then that may create further problems from them, right? So that'd be the foundation. And the other one that's important in this communication will be being able to listen. And I think this is one, not something to be proud of, but I think one of the hallmarks of Asian parenting is we see ourselves as being this person who is like a higher status, superior, you need to listen to me. And as a result, we don't listen to the child, and then we just go straight into problem solving, right? And that's where the child may go like, for example, mom, dad, being bullied in school, right? Which is a very vulnerable topic. I'm being bullied in school. And then the parent goes, oh, don't worry lah. Yeah, it happens in school lah. I also last time worse than you, Or like, you just focus on your studies, this thing. And then what happens? So meaning what? The emotions doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Right? So yes, you want to be able to provide that kind of support, that kind of solution. But even before you provide that solution, you have to listen to them first, understand. And then when they know that, okay, you know the struggles that I'm going through, the boat that I'm in right now, then they feel like, okay, now we are connected, right? Now then you can start giving that kind of advice. And even this advice has to be a two-way thing. Like, okay, it shouldn't be something that is being prescribed to them and say that, hey, okay, do this. And then they're expected to follow, because that will lead to another trap when the child comes back and, oh, I'm not able to do this. Oh, it's your fault. I tell you to do this, right? Never do. It becomes your fault. That, again, breaks that relationship with the child. So it's very important for that parent to, okay, make it a two-way communication. What does the child say? And it's also important because as a result, the child feels a sense of responsibility. Like, I need to follow up on this because this is something which I say. It's not something that, okay, is being dictated to me and I have to do it. Now, when they have a sense of responsibility, then they take ownership of whatever that they have in their life. So they learn to take autonomy, they take pride in what they're doing. And when there is a sense, when they manage to accomplish whatever struggle or overcome whatever struggles, they feel that, okay, this is something that I do. Right, instead of something that my parents came to rescue me, asked me to do, and they don't learn the skills from there.
That's right. So Haikal, just now you mentioned talking about when parents do not have a strong communication front with them, that's when the children, they tend to turn to internet, turn to friends. And if they do have good influences, then that's good. But if not, then how? Then my next question to you is that I found research has shown that since 2015, ISD has dealt with 11 self-radicalized Singaporean youths, aged 20 or below, under the ISA or Internal Security Act. In your opinion, Haikal, why do you think youth are vulnerable to being radicalized online? How do we protect our children?
So for these youth who have been radicalized online, there's a good... I haven't spoken to them or anything like that, but I feel that there is a likelihood that they are in search of their identity, because that's what youth do. They are in search of their identity. They want to break free from the kind of role that their parents give them, the sense of clothing. They don't want their parents to dress them up. They want to find something new. So they need to find a way to get that source of identity.
Yes.
And one important source of identity for these individuals could be the identity of a Muslim. Right, and when they don't have that kind of guidance of how do you develop this identity of a Muslim, they find it online, right? And again, we talk about this ability to meet this emotion needs. These people who get radicalized, they don't just get radicalized because, okay, logically you need to be like this. They get radicalized through roadblocks, through Discord and all that, where they actually get their sense of emotional needs. They feel that, well, there's this sense of community, right? These people understand me, right? And then from there, it just slowly just grows and they feel that, well, there's this sense of community, because it's not just the old case where they look at magazines and now they're, okay, they are playing games or they just make the scenario like how it would be in these other countries, and that they feel that sense of belonging. And that lack of belonging that isn't there in the home, right, gets filled up by this identity, this sense of belonging with these other people. And then they feel that, well, I think that's like my identity. This is where I want to build things up. As youth, they may not have that ability to analyze, compare. So when they actually are on social media, there's this
games, like you mentioned,
games, right? There's this other thing that is very hidden. We don't realize it, but it's actually there. We know, but it's there. It's this thing called algorithm, right? This algorithm will put us, will showcase to us the things that, well,
we want to see.
Right? And also, if the person starts having some form of like a bit more radicalized thinking, then more radical kind of information gets filtered to them. And then when there's other information, when they starts becoming more radicalized, when there's other opposing views, they start to just, ignoring them, and they just become very focused on what is there. So it's a very silent process, and it's almost possible to trace it back to this inability to meet their emotional needs and trying to get their emotional needs met elsewhere. And that's how they find it online. And
that's so interesting the way you put it, because most people would think that these radicalized youths, they brought it upon themselves, or they actually went to find it. But these are all the hidden, measures or hidden processes that they don't realize is happening to them.
I don't think any one of these teenagers went on like, how do I hurt other people or what? But then it just slowly feels like, there's that sense of connectedness here, right? Maybe because also when they come from those families where there's no sense of that, there isn't that sense of identity, that sense of maybe anger or unfairness, and they see unfairness happening in other places as well, then they feel that we kind of can relate, right?
Correct.
So they kind of gravitate towards these kind of communities as well.
Thank you, Haikal, for sharing with us. Now, to wrap up this discussion, I would like to ask Ustazah this final question. Is there an Islamic approach to parenting, Ustazah? Could you share with us examples of Prophet Muhammad SAW examples in his upbringing of his children that parents must strive to follow? You know, there are a lot of examples that we hear or we learn about, but what examples are very strongly encouraged for parents to follow?
Parents play a pivotal role in shaping the values and the character of their children. Because of that, parents must make it a point to make themselves available for their children, especially when they are growing up. I understand that it's impossible for us to be there with them 24/7 because we are working or they are schooling. There are a lot of influences around them, so it's hard for us to actually monitor them every second. But we have to at least be there for them. And in Islam, the first thing that the religion taught us is to prepare a culture within our household. So that means we do not blame the outside, but we have to look within the walls of our home. So make a culture. So for example, if we find that our children are always having screen time, take that away. Don't make it
a norm.
Yes. Because there's even the Prophet Muhammad SAW, he gave an example for youth. He encouraged us to fill up the time of our children with beneficial activities. And Prophet Muhammad SAW mentioned outdoor activities. Nowadays, they are outdoors, but in front of the screen. I mean, the screen is always like there. It's always under their nose.
Yes.
I mean, not only them, it's us as well, the adults. So actually, they look at us.
And as example,
yes,
right?
Exactly. So we have to set that culture first inside our home. Now, if they see their parents in front of the screen, obviously they will do the same as well. So within the home, you have to set the culture. So if you don't want your children to be too long in front of the screen time, so parents must set that example first. So the example must be from the parents. So we do not blame the outside world. We do not blame, this one, the influence.
Yes.
It starts from within.
Correct.
So in Islam, it's like that. You take care of your internal first, and after that, you monitor them when they are outside. So their social life is that parents must monitor them as well. And of course, they cannot just leave them. So they have to make themselves available for them. That's what we need to do. That means it's like we have to make sure that our children, their time are filled up with beneficial activities. If it's too much of screen time, maybe we can plan activities that are not in front of the screen, that are beneficial for them. Even there's even a narration by Prophet Muhammad SAW. It's like you teach your child to ride the horse. Everything is outdoor, to play the archery, of course, because during that time there's no screen, and also swimming. So in other words, the scholars said that the reason why there's that narration is because Prophet Muhammad SAW wants parents to encourage children to fill up their time with activities and not to have idle time. Because when they do not have any activities, they'll find something that is enjoyable but might not be beneficial. So we have to fill up their time. We have to plan out. I mean, being parents is not easy. It's never easy. It's hard work. I'm telling you, it's hard work. So I always tell my friends, or I always tell my husband that, you know what, the busiest time is during the holidays, the school holidays. The busiest, we are at our busiest time is during the holidays because we have to fill up their time. Make sure that everything is, the activities are beneficial for them. Yeah.
Thank you, Ustazah, for sharing with us. We have learned so much from both of you. I think all of us can say the same, from both Haikal and Ustazah. Thank you for being with us today on the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. So if you like this episode, please follow Tune Islam, share and stay tuned for more. Assalamualaikum.